All right. Thank you to everyone who's joining us tonight for the community meeting for the new middle school in Northeast Austin. Before we dive into the meeting, we'd like to go over how to access interpretation. We do have Spanish interpretation available this evening. I'll pass it over to Carla.
Hi, good evening. My name is Carla Rivera and I'm with Community Engagement. I will be providing steps for interpretation services this evening. So if you'd like to follow along, the information is going to be in English as well. Muy buenas tardes, muy buenas noches. Mi nombre es Carla Rivera. Yo soy una de las coordinadoras de participación comunitaria. Esta noche vamos a tener servicios de interpretación para nuestras familias que hablan en español. Si usted actualmente está utilizando una laptop o una computadora, por favor ponga su cursor a la parte de abajo de la pantalla y va a ver un icono del globo terráqueo que usted puede seleccionar y que dice interpretación. Ya cuando lo vea, por favor, seleccione el idioma de preferencia. En esta situación sería español. Al igual, ya que para que no esté escuchando las dos presentaciones en inglés y en español, por favor asegúrese de mudar o seleccionar Mute Original Audio para que no escuche la información dos veces. Next slide. Al igual, si usted está con nosotros por teléfono, queremos darle la oportunidad de también poder seleccionar interpretación en español. Cuando usted en su teléfono vea 3 puntos, por favor presiónalos y seleccione Language Interpretation, que sería interpretación del lenguaje. Después va a seleccionar el lenguaje, en este punto sería español, y por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio y eso va a prevenir que usted escuche esta conversación de esta tarde en inglés y en español. Y esas son las instrucciones. Si tienen por favor alguna pregunta o duda, por favor pongan en el chat y le vamos a contestar. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Carla. And thank you again to everyone who's joining us this evening for the community meeting. We appreciate you being here. Up on the screen, you'll see our agenda for tonight. We plan to cover project overview and timeline update, design overview. You can get a little, see where the design's at, any new additions that have been added since our last community meeting. We'll talk a little bit more about what to expect during construction. We'll also hear from the AISD academics team, and then we'll leave plenty of time at the end for questions and answers. And so we do encourage you, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, to please drop those in the chat, and we'll be sure to get to them towards the end. And before we really get started, I wanted to recognize one of our trustees that is here with us, Trustee Foster. Would you like to say anything before we get started? We might have him on mute. All right. Well, with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Drew Johnson with the Construction Management Department with AISD.
All righty, good evening. Can y'all hear me all right? All right, I see some thumbs up there. So I'm Drew Johnson. I'm one of our directors for Austin ISD Construction Management. I'm kind of functioning as the point of contact for the district for construction in this project. So I'm going to share a couple high-level updates, and then I'm going to ask Kate Braun with our architect and Joris, our contractor, to jump in and provide some details. So we are very pleased to share with y'all that this project is one of those out of the 2017 bond program with the goal of bringing modernized learning spaces to AISD. And this is being built in Northeast Austin with a planned capacity of around 800 students. Now, you may hear a little more about this from Kate, but with our new flexible designs, that capacity number can shift some. But that was the long-range target planning goal for the project. And as we state here, lots of collaborative spaces, project-based learning, kind of modern spaces for modern learning. Next slide. So just a little bit about the project team. So LPA is the architecture firm we've been working with on this project. In this bond program, we also work with them on Menchaca and Cassis. If you're curious for some other schools they've built, and happened to get a chance to see those. And then Joris as well is our contractor, and they've also worked with the same team on those 2 projects as well. Been a good fit, and we're excited to be under construction on this one. We started this project back in 2019. Some of you will remember that with our campus architectural team. That's our CAT team. So that's community members and as well as district staff and leadership and folks to provide input during design. And so what you're about to see in the design is really the result of that work with our CAT. And this is where we get input from each community. So we do this for every project, but obviously here at New Northeast, this has been with folks from this community. Next slide. So just a little bit update on timeline, because if you've been following along, we have had a few changes to the timeline. So we let y'all know maybe 6 months ago, it's been quite a while, that we did have some delays in the real estate negotiations that we were undergoing with the city of Austin and Catellus, the Mueller master developer. We have been able to move forward though. We've got a lease agreement with the city now in place that allows us to begin constructing, and we are finalizing the permanent transaction for the real estate. And so we mobilized in early August and wanted to have this meeting here today to let y'all know, answer any questions, and talk about next steps on the project. So just a little bit back down there at the bottom on future milestones. So we do plan to conclude those real estate negotiations in early 2022. And then we are on track to open the new middle school in the fall of 23. That is a year delayed from the initial plan. I think we let y'all know that in the project update. We also let the CVOC know that, but I wanted to make sure to point that out here in case anyone had a question about that. Next slide. All right, so with that, let me hand it over to Kate Morrall with LPA and ask her to take us through the design at a high level and get a look at this awesome school. Kate?
Thank you, Drew. So we're really excited to share with you a little bit of the progress and update on the design for the new middle school in Northeast Austin. This is a little bit of a look back at the process of how we got to this point. You know, we know that some of you may have attended previous community meetings, but for some of you, this may be your first community meeting. So we wanted to give you an overview of how we got to this point and what that process looked like. With any design project, you'll go through a programming, schematic design, design development, and then construction document phase. And all of this is really working towards developing something that starts with just a list of room spaces to then getting to where we are now with complete documents and renderings of what the program will look like. And throughout that process, we worked with, as Drew mentioned, the campus architectural team. This was a committee of community members, academic leaders and teachers, educators. That was about 15 people. And so we had that same group of 15 people work with us throughout the entire process. Covering over a dozen meetings, going through that whole stage of the process. And in the beginning, it was about getting to know each other and setting the vision, really bringing together some of the ideas that they all brought, but then aligning those to the educational specifications. As you can see, there are other layers of outreach that happened. We had focus group meetings with directors and students. We had engagement with department heads at the district. And then we also had community meetings. There were 3 community meetings prior to this one tonight, where we were able to present the progress of the design, get feedback from the community, and then apply that information. Then the last piece there was also coordinating with the developer.
Kate, can I interrupt for a moment?
Yes.
We just got a signal from the interpreters. If you could slow down a little, they're having a hard time keeping up. Thank you.
We'll definitely slow down. Thank you. And the final piece there at the bottom is the developer coordination. So meeting with the council, the Architectural Council for New Construction at Mueller. So that was definitely one part of the project that added a new layer of engagement and consistency to provide the campus in this area. Next slide. So this next slide shows a little bit more detail on the imagery, the types of activities that we were doing with the CAT team. The idea here was to really model the collaborative behavior that we'd want to see, or that the district had outlined as goals for the campus. And so we took this design thinking process by setting the vision and goal setting early on the left-hand side there, really understanding what the goals and the alignment to the educational specifications would be. In the middle, we actually broke the group into teams, and each of the teams designed their own campus, a hands-on activity to understand adjacencies, to think about drop off. Those are Twizzlers, those are the bus loops. So there was some candy involved, but it was a really great process because we were able to then find consistency between those different diagrams to really help kind of find the alignments with what each of the groups were looking to achieve, and then develop some conceptual diagrams from that. We also took project tours. We put some of the project tours, some of these were actually tours outside of the campus, going to projects out around the district, and then also visiting the site, making sure we had a good understanding of the vistas, a good understanding of the area of the site and access points, the scale of the neighborhood and the scale of the buildings surrounding that. And all of this really fed into creating campus diagrams that were site diagrams of options. As you can see in the bottom right image, these options were presented to that CAT by then looking at a prioritization exercise. So showing them several options of how the campus could be organized, going through the opportunities and the constraints of each of those, and then really hearing from the community and those CAT members about what some of the benefits would be and coming back with a solution. Next slide. So as we won't go through every meeting of what was accomplished in each of those 15, 16 CAT meetings, we would like to show you the results of the process and really where the design is today. So here you can see a site map at the intersection of Tilly and Zach Scott. There's about 10 acres of land that's dedicated for school use on that site. And then just to the right, there's a small campus diagram. This really shows you that the drop-off access for the buses is on the north side of that campus. And then parent drop-off is going to be on the south edge of the campus building. The campus building is in the center there with the heart of the campus, a courtyard, an outdoor learning environment that will help create celebration moments and culture and community in this new facility. There are also some athletic spaces, as you can see on the right-hand side and the lower side of the campus, a new track and field and tennis courts to supplement the academic program. Next slide. This shows a high-level floor plan view. The campus is actually 3 stories of academic building. On the top part of the plan here, you can see that there's 3 floors of classrooms in blue, maker spaces, some of the project-based learning environments, and community spaces. There are also areas for professional development for teachers, educators, as well as collaborative learning environments. And in just a few moments, I'll show you a rendering view of what that looks like as well. The library is on the 2nd floor of that academic wing, and that really actually has a 2-story volume that really opens it up to some of the views north of the campus. And then on the 3rd floor, there are also career tech spaces and innovative labs that really go over that space. There's also a roof deck that's going to be in view of one of our renderings here that I'll be able to show you in just a moment. So in addition to the 3-story classroom building, there's an arts and athletics center. That's what you see in the lower half of the plan in the pink and purple tones. So there's fine arts classrooms, there's dance programs, locker rooms and changing areas, as well as the gymnasium. That's the larger volume on that south side of the plan. That opens up close to those athletic centers and the exterior space. And then just on top, in front of that space is actually a cafeteria and a dining commons with a stage and an area for the community to gather. That dining commons has some outdoor access that will really open it up to that courtyard that I spoke about earlier. That's the heart of the campus. Next slide. So these next views are going to show you a little bit of the renderings of how each of the campus components are coming together. Here we're looking at an image north of the campus, looking back down at the campus diagram, and you can see the 3-story academic building here, as well as the single-story athletics and arts facility just in the distance beyond that. There are actually a lot of access points for campus. There's your ability to do bus drop-off on the north, and then parent drop-off on the south, and a safe pedestrian-friendly access at all of those areas. This also includes bike racks and storage distribution on the north, the south, and the west edge of the campus, with a beautiful green buffer along that edge of the campus as well to sort of set the buildings back from the pedestrian pathway along Tilly. So the one thing I also wanted to mention were the sustainability goals of the project. We're committed to meeting silver, but we're actually tracking gold right now. And that gold, LEED Gold designation would align with the development of the LEED Gold development. And so that's something for those of you who aren't as familiar with LEED. It's a sustainability system that allows you to measure the success of sustainable implementation of different design features that can be managed throughout the campus. Next rendering. So this is getting a little bit closer to the campus at the entry. There is a secure entrance point from the Tilley Avenue or Tilley Street. And just in this view, you can see a few elements. There's the single story, which is a high volume on the right-hand side of the brick. That is going to be the fine arts and the gymnasium to the right. And then there will also be a community room on the left-hand side. That community room will be something that's accessible to be able to have events, for voting, for other community needs that may be required throughout the campus. Additionally, on the top right of the campus where the third floor curves over that brick piece of the building, there's actually a roof deck. So we can imagine that this would be great for student experiments and project-based learning and to be able to get outside and explore some of those views that you can see so great from this distance. Next view. Here we are looking on the inside of the campus as if you came through that portal and turned around. This is really looking on your left-hand side is the dining commons. That's the new cafeteria for the new middle school at Northeast Austin. A lot of great windows and visibility, but it also has good afternoon shade with that large overhang. In the distance is the administration, kind of far in the middle of the screen. And then on the right-hand side, we have the academic wing. That's the 3-story academic wing. And that ground floor has great access to the courtyard with connections that allow the student learning to come out and enjoy that courtyard space as part of their extended day. Next slide. These last 2 images go inside just to show you a little bit of the interior views. This is one of those ground floor learning collaborative spaces that also has makerspace and connects to that courtyard. So the glass that you see in the distance is the connection to the courtyard view we were just looking at. And this is one of those flexible spaces that Drew had mentioned earlier. Allows expansion of the learning, connects back to the collaborative space of the maker environment, and really is an offshoot of that collaboration and circulation to really connect those learning spaces together and help create a culture of community and connectedness. The next image is similar space in each of those wings and each of those floors. There's a different approach to how the collaboration is allocated across the square footage. This shows you a little bit of a view of what the access to one of the classrooms would be. So instead of walking through a standard hallway with solid walls, the connection is really open and collaborative. There's writable spaces, tackable surfaces, dynamic lighting, and visibility to and from the classroom so that the students can extend their learning opportunities and create more opportunities to be able to bridge out into those spaces. So that really summarizes the design. I know that there are probably questions. I saw the chat window popping up and we can go over those at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. We'll go ahead and pass it over to the Joris team to walk us through a little bit more about what to expect during construction.
Yes, hi, thank you, Sarah. Good evening, all. My name is Odi Chuchos. I'm the Senior Project Manager for Joris General Contractors. And we here at Joris, we're very excited to be part of this project, and we really appreciate the opportunity. So one of the main targets that we will have during the construction is to minimize the impact that the construction process will have to the neighborhood. And so with that being said, some things that you should expect, the neighborhood should expect during the construction is a temporary fencing around the construction area, which is already installed and will remain there for the duration of the construction process, and is covered with a black safety netting. There will be trucks entering and exiting the site from Zach Scott and Tilley Street. And on the next slide, we'll have a map showing you the allowable trucking routes. There will be some occasional early morning concrete pours, and we will try to minimize them as much as possible, but there will be some. And there will be some backup alarms from all the equipment, and while the trucks are on site. And and also the general hammering, drilling, and all the equipment now used. Yeah, next slide, please. So this is a map that we are sharing with all our trade partners and our vendors. And as you can see, the trucks will be entering the construction site from Zaxcott, coming from Manor Road, and they will be exiting from Tutili Street and towards 51st Street. And we will try our best to stay away completely from all the other roads. Next slide, please. Yes. So some timelines is the construction started in August of 2021. The superstructure will be completed by June. And by saying superstructure, we mean the exterior steel and concrete. Exterior finishes will be done by end of next year, which is all the face bricks and the panels and the windows. And the rest of the site will be completed by February of 2023, and the overall construction will be done by spring of 2023, and ready to move in for, obviously, for 2023 summer.
Great, thank you, Odie.
Thank you.
All right, well, we are going to pass it over to Kenesha Coburn, an Executive Director with the Office of School Leadership.
Good evening, everyone. This is a quick academics update to give you some picture of the programming that we're looking forward to making sure our students have access to in the new middle school in Northeast Austin. It will be a comprehensive campus. So that means that we'll have robust core classes, that's math, science, social studies, and English language arts, physical education, athletics, and all that comes along with that, and also fine arts course offerings. There are a number of dual language campuses in this region, and we are committed to dual language district-wide. So we do expect dual language Spanish to be a program that is available at the new middle school as well. And then also a strong health science and technology programmatic focus. Here are some examples of what that looks like coming from partnerships with our career and technical education department. That's Project Lead the Way, Medical Detectives, which is a program that we don't have in a lot of our AISD schools yet. Principles of Biosciences, Project Lead the Way Engineering, which is the technology side, technology partner, if you will, of the Medical Detectives. A coding, computer science focus. And then also there are a number of clubs, teacher sponsored and fully funded clubs that come under career and technical education to support health science and technology. So those will be the big academic focuses so far at the new middle school in Northeast Austin.
Thank you for that, Kenesha. All right, well, as promised, we wanted to leave plenty of time at the end of our meeting to answer any questions, address any feedback that the community has. I do want to point out that before we get started, if we aren't able to get to all of the questions today, or we aren't able to answer your question today, we do encourage you to reach out and follow up with our team. Please feel free to drop any questions in the chat, or I see we have members raising their hand already. We'll go ahead and call on some folks. So Candace, I see your hand is raised. Let's go ahead and call on you. And then I know we have some questions in the chat that we'll be sure to address as well.
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know, my name is Candace Hunter, and I'm a longtime Northeast Austin community member. I've also been a teacher and vendor for Austin ISD. I'm on the CAT team for the new Northeast Middle School. I have some concerns about the programming. That seems to ever be changing. I was always told at the beginning that that would be decided by the community. We also haven't really decided like who's going to attend this school. Like I would really like to know, who is this school being built for? Like who's going to attend? I don't know if there's going to be a change in the boundaries or what's happening with the school.
Thank you for those questions, Candace. I'm going to go ahead and pass those over to Ms. Coburn to help us address those.
Yep, thank you for those questions, Ms. Hunter. And I see some similar questions also coming up in the chat. So in the past, we had a boundaries committee that would decide enrollment plans for campuses. We no longer have that committee. And the reason that we don't have that committee is that we really are reimagining how those decisions are made in a way that is more in alignment with district and community values than perhaps some of the decisions that were made in the past. So what that process will look like and how we'll engage the community in that process has not been fully fleshed out, but it will not necessarily be what the process used to look like. We do know our timeline for determining how students will, which students will be identified to enroll at the new middle school is December before the start of the first school year. So while the delay in opening isn't what we all preferred, it has provided us with some time to go back and reassess how we make those decisions and try to do it the right, a right and equitable and community engaged way. So we don't have, I can't tell you today, students from these places will be enrolled because we have not gotten with all parts of the community that will be impacted to make those determinations yet.
Thank you, Kanisha. And I know there were some questions too about the programming as well, and if the community will be involved in that process.
Yes, there is a significant amount of community engagement coming your way for all things programming, staffing timeline, enrollment. However, the pieces that you saw today are there because they are district values and they also support programs that are in the region. So dual language I spoke about exists in a lot of our elementary campuses, and it's something we want to continue to support. Biliteracy and biculturalism, so that we expect to be there. The technology focus, the middle school sits right in the midst of the Northeast High School area of the district. So we want to make sure that the programming there is able to support that campus programming, and the same for the region of the district where we're building a robust health science program at LBJ High School. So of course, none of this is final, and we have lots of community engagement to come, but those are some of the kind of thinking behind ensuring that at very least we prioritize those areas of career and technical education and also dual language.
Thank you. All right, well, we'll work through some of the questions that I see in the chat. I'm just going to start with which ones came in first. So I'll address one that was at the top of the meeting, which is if this meeting will be recorded and posted for those who are not able to attend, and the answer is yes. The recording will be posted to aisdfuture.com. So please feel free to share it with your networks. All right, our next question, Drew and our construction team, I'll send this one over to you. How confident are you that you will meet this new fall 2023 target?
That is a great question. So the delays we've experienced today were solely associated with real estate. They weren't related to anything kind of within the realm of the construction we control. But now that we're under construction, we do have a lot of those risks. So I feel very confident about our schedule. We actually are on track to finish the building in the spring and have a nice comfy move-in. That gives us some contingency in case we have another winter storm or another 50-year historic wet June like we just had. So we've built in some of that contingency within the project. Overall, though, I would say I am very confident in this team. They opened Menchaca ahead of schedule. They opened Cassis on time. And we're going to be watching it closely. And then, as we always do, if we do have any delays, we do have any challenges, we'll let the CAT know. We'll update the project team. We'll update the CVOC. So I feel very confident about this project, but as always, there is risk and nothing's certain until it's done.
Thanks, Drew. Our next question addresses safety, and it is there a committee in place to discuss how children will safely cross 51st Street, either via bike or walking? Drew, I'm not sure if you could talk a little bit more about our work with Safe Routes to Schools.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So some of the traffic problems, challenges, safety issues we've already been able to discuss with the city, discuss with the CAT, and design for. The challenges offsite and adjacent and away from the site, many of them are still changing because there's a ton of construction in that area. So we've spoken with Safe Routes to School, which is the city entity that helps try to ensure that we've got good sidewalks and bike paths and things to our schools. We've also been working with Catellus and then AISC Transportation. I imagine closer to the school opening, so probably the year or so before it opens, if we still have some existing concerns, we'll either put a plan in place for transportation so that kiddos aren't having to access an unsafe route, or we'll work directly with the city and the offsite partners to address those as they arise. We've tried to tackle the ones we're aware of now. Some of them will be better handled closer to the opening.
Great, thank you, Drew. We do have some feedback in the chat from Dusty, and Dusty, I'm going to summarize, but please feel free to come off mute and chime in if you feel like I'm leaving anything out. Dusty mentions that the delay in opening the school does offer an opportunity to conduct meaningful community-involved process to determine the school's academic programming and enrollment design. And so I know we've covered this, but there are plans to have a very robust community engagement process when it comes to those, to programming and that boundary discussion.
Yes, and thank you. If I could add a quick word, it'd be only, and I don't want to get this off track from the facility and construction discussion that it is, and we've had several of these, but equally important, and probably what many folks are here for, is a meaningful discussion on, Northeast Austin educational strategy, as it's a bit disjointed. So as soon as we could possibly commence that discussion involving district staff and community deeply, that would be much appreciated. That's all. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for adding that. All right. Couple more questions in the chat that I see. We have a question of if this will be a magnet school. Ms. Coburn.
I don't know that I can't give a yes or no to that question, because that is going to be a part of community engagement and determining what enrollment looks like and who this campus serves. There has not been a yes, this is going to be a magnet campus, or any plan that I'm aware of for that to be the case. But that discussion, I'm sure, may land on the table as we engage with the community.
Thank you. And along those lines of enrollment, we do have a question of if there will be an ability for families to transfer if they are not within the service area. I assume, Ms. Coburn, that's along those same lines.
Yes, district-wide, we have transfer processes that are available to families. So I don't imagine that there wouldn't be some form of that for the new middle school. But again, what that might look like, if there's capacity to do that, and if so, how much capacity, that is part of the work that is to come.
Yeah. All right. We have a question that I'm going to hand over to Drew or Kate. Either one of you might be able to take this one. And it is, if there were any adjustments in design predicting long-term changes in how folks might interact in a post-COVID world.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it actually has come up in our CAP meetings and other discussions. One of the benefits that we have with the outdoor learning spaces is that's an area that there can be outdoor dining, outdoor learning, and outdoor shade, outdoor play. Additionally, the collaborative spaces and the maker spaces, those are unassigned, meaning that they're not dedicated or designated. So they allow students to spread out and social distance. That's something that really is part of that kind of past COVID world that the team and the district were already thinking about on how to create more collaborative learning environments. Will it also allow students to spread out more? And third, with the LEED standards that we're meeting, the indoor air quality is notably more performs at a higher level than what you would imagine in your existing schools that were built years ago or in a standard design because of the filtration and everything that we're doing from an indoor air quality perspective. So there are many areas of design, both in the facility condition and in the programming, that have already accomplished a lot of things that we'd see in a post-COVID world.
Thanks, Kate. And looking through the questions, it looks like we have quite a few around what that community engagement process is going to look like around programming and boundary discussions. Ms. Coburn, I know we've talked a little bit about this, but is there anything you can add about that community engagement process?
Nothing that I believe is going to do justice in answering the question that's on the table. We did meet, Allie and I and a few other team members are meeting to define what that looks like. The approach that we plan to take for this campus is new. It's not what we've done in the past for community engagement around enrollment planning for a campus. And we're really trying to get that right. So part of our work after this meeting will be putting together that timeline and also what the purpose of the meetings are going to be. Are we starting looking at lines in a road somewhere, or are we starting looking at values? So that is work to come. So I apologize that I can't give a precise timeline, but we do know that that's a need and a request, and that's something that we will be working on getting out to the community here very soon.
And I'll add to that any input on that community engagement process is welcomed. On our next slide, we're going to go ahead and drop in, there you go, some contact information. And so please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. All right, I do see a question here in the chat that I will go ahead and pass over to our JORS team. And it is, any thoughts on how trucks during construction and buses after opening will navigate narrow traffic calming measures at Tillery and 51st and Manor and Zach Scott? Not to mention how narrow Tillery is overall. Also, keeping the roads and bike lanes free of debris and impediments is a struggle near construction sites. How will construction companies manage this?
So Odie, do you want to speak a little bit to management during construction? And then Kate, I'm hoping you can speak about the design intent of where those are located.
Yes.
Thank y'all.
Sure, yes. Thank you for the question. So that is, first of all, keeping the streets clean around the site is something that we always have in our mind, and we're always keep an eye for. So what we do is we typically have trucks with sweeps very often coming and cleaning the streets around the construction site. We also have workers here, JORIS workers, that we will be looking out and picking up debris if anything comes outside of the construction site. And also we have processes to clean up the trucks as they leave from the site to make sure that they're not tracking any mud. But there is also there is always going to be cleaning of the street involved as needed. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay. And then as far as the buses and the design intent, we did ensure that the buses could turn in while the cars are in every lane. And part of the strategy was by making some minor modifications to the curb cuts on Tilley and the drive aprons to be able to accommodate that. Additionally, I know the site diagram was small when we shared that plan, but there's stacking distance for all those buses to be on site so that they're not stacking on Tilley.
Great, thank you. Drew, is there anything that you have there to add?
Yes, the one thing I was going to add, and sorry I was on mute there, is obviously if you're out in the community, you have an issue, please let the bond site know, the website know. If you're a neighbor immediately adjacent to the site, I'm going to pick up the phone and call Odie and say, hey, Odie, that guy across the street said you're making a mess. So if you do live near the site, Odie and his team are there and they're very friendly. They'll work directly with you if you happen to run into them, but you can always reach out directly to us and we'll handle it as well. I just want to let y'all know that they're there. They're going to be next door neighbors. If you are a neighbor, work with them. And if there's any issues, let us know. We'll be working with them as well.
Great, thank you. All right, I know we still have some hands up, so I'm moving away from the chat questions for just a minute. Ms. Hunter, do you have any additional questions, or is your hand still up?
I apologize. I'll lower my hand.
No, you're okay. Mr. Gruera?
Yeah, hi, good evening. Good to see some of these familiar faces from Marquette. It's been a while. I'm gonna follow up. I got two things, I guess. Follow up with what Kate said about the buses. That Maynard Zach Scott intersection, as well as that 51st Tilly Street intersection. Those are tight for any bus. So I guess during construction, y'all will experience that firsthand. And I don't know, I think some curbs got to get smashed, but we'll see. I'm worried about those intersections for buses for sure. Especially being someone who lives in the neighborhood and drives and bikes through those intersections a lot. So that was just kind of something that came to me while the construction question was being asked. But my question or comment or feedback echoes what Nadia Khan put in the chat at about 6:43 timestamp, which is that the district is doing long range planning right now. Excuse me, the district is rushing through some long range planning right now. And it seems that the question of enrollment and attendance boundaries, as well as academic programming for this school specifically, seems to keep getting pushed and kicked down the road, while the long range planning seems to be moving faster and faster. Applications were due a couple of days ago. So I guess my feedback, and hopefully y'all take this, is to slow down a little bit, because if you're doing this long range planning for the whole district, that would probably include the academic programming and the enrollment boundaries for this school, this middle school, and the subsequent changes of enrollment and boundaries for all the other middle schools. And I just don't see how you can make decisions about the enrollment boundaries for this middle school without affecting all the rest, thus affecting all your long range plans. So if you're moving forward with long range planning committees, but not really giving the community a lot of information on when decisions will be made about this middle school specifically, then it seems like the two need to merge and the conversations need to be concurrent, shared, and at a timeline that's a little more, that's adjusted for a fall 23 opening and not a fall 22 election. So that's my feedback, because everything Nadia is saying in her comment is true. The feeder pattern, the academic programming, not just at the middle school in the Northeast that's being built here in the Mueller development, but how it affects all the other middle schools and their particular programming across the North, east to west. So the sooner y'all can start including us in the long range planning, and by us, I mean the community here in the Northeast this middle school is supposed to serve, the sooner we're going to feel comfortable and confident with the school and the plans and who it's supposed to serve. Thanks.
Thank you for that feedback. I know you mentioned Nadia has those similar comments in the chat, and it looks like there are other community members that echo that sentiment. So appreciate you voicing that opinion here, or that feedback. All right. Let me pull up our next question here in the chat. Given the growth of the East Side generally, how will the campus be expanded to serve additional students? And what is the maximum size of the current design? How can that expand to serve additional students? Drew, Kate, Drew, I see your hands up.
Yep, I can take this one. So this school is on a fairly constrained tract of land, as it's one of the last pieces to be developed in Mueller. And so early in planning, we knew that posed a challenge to the capacity. So we actually massed and sized this school based on both understanding the projections in the area at the time. Granted, as many of you are saying, and absolutely right, without a boundary and feeder patterns, all of that is variable and subject to change. But the site really became our driving constraint when looking at all that information. So we set a target capacity of 800 and a budget to build towards that. What we always challenge the team to do in design is to find ways to stretch that, to find ways to push that dollar further. So there isn't, like some schools, a planned kind of expansion where we can put a new building in this corner and, you know, give me another $20 million, we can have a new wing down the road. This site is too constrained for us to have planned for that. We looked at it, it wasn't something that could be fit on site. What we have done, and it's in line with our ed specs, is make sure we've built this with flexible use spaces so that that capacity could flex up depending on the way it's used. What we see across the district is many of our middle schools function at about 75 or 80% utilization. When we flex that number up with flexible spaces, PLCs, some of our crowded middle schools can get all the way up above 90. So we're talking flexing that up by, you know, 10, 15, north of that perhaps percent. There's always a possibility to add portables if needed. Our preference is to only do that as a last resort, but there are times where that makes sense. I think to highlight what a lot of other folks have said is what will be very important as we define this vertical team and alignment and feeder patterns is making sure we understand that student demand so that we don't overwhelm the building, because the building does have a limited capacity.
Thank you, Drew. And I want to acknowledge there are multiple comments in the chat regarding feeder pattern that have come in throughout our discussion. And so I do want to say that we are recording all of the comments that are coming in through the chat, and those will be passed along to members of the district. We have a question here. I heard about a short-term homeless shelter proposed for Manor Road. Are there any known nuisances between necessary distances or nuances, excuse me, between necessary distance of a middle school and a short-term homeless shelter? I'm not sure if we have anyone on the call that's able to answer that. Drew?
Yeah, so I can't speak specifically to the shelter you're mentioning, but I can speak towards the way we as a district handle safety concerns near our schools. We've seen this across the city in the last couple of years. Many of our elementary schools in South Austin, actually near the headquarters, have dealt with this related to homeless folks in the area. Our local police, our AISD police, works with APD to identify and kind of increase patrols where needed based on campus concerns. We also use any safety concern, and that could be, you know, violence or vagrancy or something like that, when we plan our traffic patterns. I've seen times where we've adjusted routes to pick up kiddos because we felt, or the community expressed concern that a route wasn't safe. So I know that's a general answer, but I would rely on our police and our transportation and anyone else in the community to help us address that.
Thank you, Drew. All right. Well, it looks like we've covered most of the questions in the chat. I do want to make sure we still have some time today, so I want to make sure that we give everybody time to ask questions or provide feedback. We welcome you to drop it in the chat, or if you'd like to come off mute, please feel free to raise your hand. I know there's been quite a bit of feedback in the chat, so we want to make sure we do hear from everyone.
Real quick question for Kate, because it was her part of the presentation. On the website for this project, which I just dropped in the chat, is it possible to get those really nice pictures of all the classrooms on top of each other? I feel like that should be on the website, and maybe I missed it, but that part of the presentation, that was my favorite part, and Zoom just doesn't do it justice. So is that going to be up on the website?
I can help answer that, Kate.
Thank you.
Yes, they will be up on the website. And just to confirm, were you talking about the renderings, or more so that footprint of the school where we can see those 3 different stories?
Yeah, the footprint. Not the renderings are pretty, but yeah, the footprint with which classes they're where and the 3 stories. Those are the ones Kate was talking. Yeah, the footprint.
Great. We can absolutely put those on the website so people can see that. All right, looks like we do have a couple of additional questions that are coming into the chat. All right, has AISD discussed use of the vacant 10 acres next to the 10-acre school site? Drew, do you have some more information on?
So Kate or Brian might have to jump in. Maybe even Faye. I saw Faye on. So we did discuss early on in planning this project all the real estate that was still available for development with the city and Catellus. We are taking ownership ultimately of approximately 10 acres that you've seen that will have our school and playfields on it, but there is some more open space that will not be owned by the district, but we'll have open space playfields. There's also the empty parcel on the corner that you saw that the city and Catellus are working to develop with an outside entity. The district's not part of that piece of real estate. I believe that's about 3 acres there.
Yeah. We do have a question about how to get involved with community input when it comes to programming, boundaries, the rest of this project. And so we encourage you, if you're interested to be on the email list, feel free to email us at future@austinisd.org. Or if it's easier, you can just call us at 512-414-9595. And we'll be sure to get your email on the list. Allie just dropped in the chat as well, a place to sign up for email updates. So a lot of different ways, but we'll make sure we get you on those email updates. All right, another question here. Will the final negotiations impact the construction timeline at all?
So they shouldn't. So the temporary lease agreement we have in place let us start constructing while we work out those remaining details in negotiation. If we do have an unexpected delay there, we'll let everybody know, but no, we don't anticipate that will impact construction.
Thanks, Drew. Mr. Tyree, looks like I see your hand raised.
Thank you, Sarah. I live 1 block away from the site on Camacho Street, and I'm hoping that the Joris will recognize that we have 2 major bikeways that go on either side of their construction site and work very hard to keep their subcontractors from parking in those bikeways. It's been a problem so far. We've been dealing with trucks in the bikeways, and we ask them to leave, and so far they've done a pretty good job of leaving, but it's illegal to park in the bikeways, and that's actually grounds for a fine. And so if they continue to do it, we will start calling 911.
Thank you for that feedback. I know we do have members of the Joris team on here.
Yes, so thank you. I'm sorry.
If I just may, can you let us know where are y'all instructing subs to park and how are y'all trying to mitigate that? And then Mr. Tyree, to your point, I apologize for that concern. And absolutely, if someone is parking illegally, feel free to call and let the authorities take care of it. We often have to do that as well adjacent to our sites, but I want to make sure we let Joris respond to how they're trying to manage it on their end.
I don't ever want to call 911 for something like that, so I'm going to try my best to keep it clean, but you know, it just it is a traffic violation, so yep. let's all work together and make it work.
Understood. And Candace, I apologize, Candace had a great idea. 311 would be better if someone's parked illegally, because that is non-emergency. Odie, what are we telling all of our subcontractors? What are we doing to try to manage that on our end?
So in this specific project, we are lucky enough to have plenty of space inside the construction. So everybody should be parking inside the construction site with no exceptions. And we will make sure that we will keep communicating that to all our team members. And yeah, obviously that is not acceptable.
I'd like to pipe in, guys. Can you hear me, Odie?
I can.
We can hear you.
I think I know where he's talking about, and I just want to let everybody know that just because there is a construction vehicle parked in and around, if they're not inside the Joris fence, That doesn't necessarily mean they are working for our project. There is a lot of construction going on in the Mueller development, especially right there on the corner of Tilly and Zach Scott. I saw that last week with that truck, and those are underground utilities. To me, I believe those are for the new houses they are doing across the road. Because as of right now, we have no construction that is happening outside of the fence. Our number, Odie and my number, are posted outside of the job site. I know several months ago, we put out cards with all of our numbers on them. So if for some reason there is somebody parked out in front, please reach out to us. If it is not our vehicle, I mean, I have no problem asking them to helping you guys out, trying to find out who they are, getting numbers from I believe it's Flynn who's across the street working on those houses. But please reach out to us. We will do our best, even if they are not specifically working for Joris.
Thank you, Jordan. All right, we do have a couple of additional questions in the chat. Drew, I know you touched on this earlier, but we've had some people join since we started our Q&A. So wanted to see if maybe you could just quickly touch on the plans to protect students biking or walking to the new school.
Yes, so we've designed the site and the improvements that we're building to try to separate and control vehicular, both parent from bus, from pedestrian. But we've also spoken with the city about some of the connections off the site. So some of the sidewalks, some of the bike lanes, we've heard concerns about some of the major street crossings. Some of these we will work with, hopefully for the city to address through their Safe Routes for Schools program, where they've got tax funded dollars to help improve school routes. Some of these, the city has asked that we wait until closer to opening. There's a lot of development still happening in the area. Some of the development will be installing additional public access, but we have heard those concerns. And then what we will also do is our transportation department will plan their routes based upon the reality of the safety and the situation when it opens. So if there's still construction adjacent to the site, if there's still crossings that are unsafe, they will plan transportation appropriately to address those areas.
Thanks, Drew. Another question we have, Kate, I'm sure you can talk a little bit more to this, is will the building and site be tied back to natural areas through outdoor native habitat areas nearby, reforested parts of the site? I think it's on an urban trails network, so will it be tied into the local parks?
Yes, I can answer that. So the bike lanes do tie into the Mueller development bike lanes, and all the planting palette is of native species across the campus. There is not a direct gate from the courtyard that we have on campus to the Greenbelt. That's for safety and security. So students on campus will be secured within that courtyard area, but we did connect through that on the bike trails and walking trails outside of the campus.
Thank you, Kate. All right. Well, I know we are coming up on 7 p.m. and I don't see any additional questions in the chat. We do have additional time if anybody does have any additional questions or feedback. Please feel free to drop that in. We'll keep an eye out for that here for the next couple moments. All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have anybody who's dropping any comments into the chat, but we'll keep that open for another few minutes. Oh, we do have a question here, a sad but necessary question. Does the building design account for active shooters and threats?
So I can answer that. I'm going to answer it at a high level because one of the things we do on each of these projects is go through a process of reviewing each of these new campuses with our police. And we take a lens of all school risks. So that's everything from bad drivers that might jump a curb to violence, to illicit behavior, and hidey stairwells that are easy for middle schoolers to sneak off and do bad things in. So yes, we review it from that perspective. We make changes in the design, and then there are specific safety features built into the design as well, both kind of passive protection, things like transparency internal to courtyards so that any staff walking down the hall can easily see what's happening in every classroom, things that are more active, like intrusion alarms, cameras, lockdown procedures, things of that nature.
And then I'll add too, just as far as visitors, there is a secure vestibule like you see in many of the other campuses across the district. And we also studied lockdown zones within the campus so that different hallways, corridors, floors, et cetera, could be secured.
Thank you, team. And Nadia, I see that you've dropped some additional feedback into the chat. We appreciate that. Talking about the equity of the Northeast region and planning for these new schools. So appreciate your feedback there. All right, with that, we want to thank everyone so much for coming out tonight. We appreciate all the questions and the feedback. As we said, please feel free to continue sharing those with us. Our contact information is up here on the screen. You can reach us at future@austinisd.org or by calling 512-414-5959. We look forward to hearing from you, and you will be certainly hearing from us about all the additional community engagement opportunities that we discussed this evening. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.